Alito Chimachukma, this is Chief Steve coming at y'all with another episode of True Story. We got a really interesting one for you guys today. This is part 2 of the true story of the Tocobaga Indians. Now before we get into it, as always, hit that like button, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe, press that subscribe button. Make sure you ring that notification bell so whenever I drop these bombs, you'll be the first ones to grab them. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. Alrighty, halito y'all. So we're going to go ahead and continue forward with our presentation on the true story of the Tocobaga Indians, which is once again not dedicated but livicated to our living brother, our Niji Mazanavayu, who wanted to know more about his ancestral tribe. So brother, this is for you and those others who have ties to this tribe or to this this group, this township, this chiefdom. As we learned in the prior presentation, part 1, that this was more than just one tribe. These were many tribes together, all having ties and roots within the Timucuan culture, who once again had separated and created their own chiefdoms within the Tampa Bay area. So if you guys need more information on that and more of the origin and of where we're coming from, go ahead and stop right here and head to part 1. Check that one out fully. I'll see if I can put a little clip or some kind of banner or something indicating that video so you guys can go ahead and hit that. But once you guys watch that, make sure you come forward, come here and continue forward with part 2. And then I'll see if I can throw a related video or something like that on the end of part 1. So you guys could just go ahead and click forward to this presentation right here and now. So, like I said, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into some more information on the Tocobaga tribe. Some really good gems that I found through the archives. I'm going to pause for the cause and go ahead and get into that. All right, so the first book that we're getting into is called The Spanish Colonization of Florida in the First Quarter of the 16th Century, Methods, Features, Causes of Failure, by Ashrafia Constantine. All right, publication date 2022. And yeah, gonna go ahead and get into it. I'm gonna skip on down to the Tocobaga tribe. The Tocobaga tribe occupied an important and convenient place on the coast of the current Tampa Bay in the west of the Florida Peninsula. Their territory approximately extended from the modern city of Sarasota to Clearwater Beach. In this area, on the land of the Tocobaga Indians, and now they found a large number of different artifacts confirming this. The territory of the Indians was located in the shallow part of Tampa Bay, overgrown with mangrove forests along the shores. Many rivers flow into the bay in this place. The mixing of salt and fresh waters provided the population with a variety of animal and plant food all year round due to the richest marine and river fauna and blooming tropical flora. So these weren't Indians who were striving to survive, and they were fruitful, they were bountiful, they had a lot, they had abundance. They were eating real good right there off the coast. And that's how I let you guys know that we are not those Indians that they show in the movies and stuff where they're just surviving and having to, doing the bare minimum to live and didn't have anything and were living in little tents and stuff and looking dirt poor and stuff. Nah, these were our Indians. We as copper-colored Aborigines, as indigenous people, as the builders, the creators, the cultivators on this land, we were bountiful. We had plenty of abundance. We knew how to fish. We knew how to cook. We knew how to create and build. We were mound builders. Okay? So we basically, we not only survived, we thrived. All right? That's a key thing to note. Tampa Bay was a border and disputed territory between the Tocobaga and the Calusa tribes. So these two tribes were beefing at one point. Chief Tocobaga claimed some cities of the Calusa tribe. Cities. You see that right there? Let's forward into that. Not sites, cities. Claimed some cities. Like I said, we aren't those Indians that they portray, those Native Americans that they portray in the TV shows and in your Westerns. We had full-blown cities, and this is the 1500s. Okay? 16th century, keep in mind. Chief Tocobaga claimed some cities of the Calusa tribe. For example, in 1566, the border of the Tocobaga lands passed in the north 50 Spanish leagues, or 2 days away from the central settlement, or the capital of Calusa, Mound Key. Chief Tocobaga was an old enemy of the leaders of the Calusa tribe. In the same 1566, the Tocobaga unexpectedly attacked the Calusa Indians and captured 12 of them, including the baptized Donna Antonia. So these Calusa Indians were Christianized. It is known that the leader of the Calusa tribe, 25-year-old King Carlos, even had a Spanish name at this point. They were christened, offered Florida Governor Mendez to land unnoticed to burn villages and kill all the Tocobaga Indians. So they were working with the Spaniards at this point, the Calusa were. The Tocobaga also feuded with the Mayaca Indians, saying that they were numerous and warlike. The Tocobaga, like the Calusa and other tribes, captured the wrecked Spaniards and used them as slaves. Okay, so they're talking about, there's a lot of slaves and, so-called black folks were the only slaves. No, it's not true. And this is before 1619. We who don't trace our roots from slavery or anywhere in Africa, stating that our people came from Africa and were enslaved, or even if our people did not come from Africa and we still can't find slaves in our lineage, and some of our lineages go back, way back before the 1500s. I know some people who have found ancestors in the 1400s, and still, like I said, some of them do not have slavery in any of their lineage. For me personally, I found no slaves in any of my family lineage on neither side. So it just goes to show that who were the real slaves? Who were the actual slaves? All right. So the Tocobaga, like the Calusa and other tribes, captured the wrecked Spaniards and used them as slaves. This fact follows from the fact that Governor Mendez was translated from the Indian language by a captured Portuguese who was wrecked off the coast of Florida and lived with the Tocobaga Indians for 6 years. So we were taking them in. The Tocobaga were taking in some of them. Hold on, we're going to pause for the cause. We're going to get back to it. There's somebody calling me. During this brief intermission, if you haven't already, make sure that you like this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Got a lot of good things coming forward, a lot of new things that are going to be taking place on the channel. So be the first ones to grab this stuff. Hit the notification bell. So whenever I drop these bombs, you'll be the first ones to grab them. Because when we drop, it's a big deal. Best believe. All right, so let's go ahead and get back to the presentation. Alrighty, y'all, my apologies for that. It's the middle of the day, as you can see in the top left corner. The day don't stop, especially for a father of 6. Yeah, so I appreciate y'all rocking with me. Well, let's go ahead and get forward to this presentation. It says there is such a record about the Tocobaga Indians. In 3 days of negotiations, more than 1,500 Indians came with their bows and arrows, and they were all very good-natured people. Then, in 1566, real quick, 1,500 with their bows and arrows. You knew that they were scared. You knew the Spanish was like, okay, so I'm about to pop off. But they said that they were good-natured people. So, what happened to the whole savage thing? It just shows you that savagery or whatever they want to call it as a slur, it's an insult, that shade is completely contradictory to how a lot of us treated them. They didn't get that savage until they crossed us. And when they crossed us and they got on our bad sides, and then we start basically giving them back that same energy, then we gonna be the savage. We're not good-natured people. We're savages. All right. But anyway, let's keep going. Then in 1566, so all of this is going down in 1566, a fort with Spaniards was established on the land of Tocobaga, in which Mendez left 30 soldiers under the command of Captain Garcia Martinez de Cos. This is the Captain Garcia Martinez de Cos. I don't know why I said that twice, but it says a year later, all of them were destroyed by the Tocobaga Indians. Why? Because as we saw in part 1, they were there to try to convert them. They were there enforcing Christianity and religion onto their culture, onto their way of life. And the Tocobaga were not pushovers. They weren't going to stand for that. All right. So this is it for this first passage. We're going to go ahead and move on to the meat and potatoes, the second passage coming forward. Okay. So this book is entitled Florida Indians and the Invasion from Europe by Gerald T. Melinek. Publication date is 1998. All right, so we're going to continue in this book starting at page 71. I believe, yeah, bottom paragraph. All righty. I got this book on rent, so we got to make it quick. Oh, it renews automatically with continued use. Okay, well, we're good. All right. Tocobaga and the Central Gulf Coast groups. Tampa Bay, a huge bite on the Gulf Coast of Florida, is an estuary whose shorelines once featured both mangrove forests and saltwater marshes. And if you guys don't know what an estuary is, we're going to pause for the cause and get to that definition here. Okay, so an estuary is a tidal mouth of a large river where the tide meets the stream. Okay? So a lot of water around that area. The Hillsborough, Alafia, Little Manatee, and Manatee rivers flow into the bay, draining freshwater wetlands in Pasco, Hillsborough, Polk, and Manatee counties. This combination of salt and freshwater habitats presented the native peoples with a veritable larder of fish, shellfish, other wild animals, and plants. It is not surprising that the indented shoreline of Tampa Bay and the adjacent islands and mainland bordering the Gulf of Mexico, from Sarasota to Clearwater, roughly 100 miles of shore and coast, once was home to a number of native groups. Archaeological sites, especially shell middens and mounds, you hear that? Mounds, associated with those colonial period groups and their pre-Columbian ancestors once blanketed those coasts and shores. Sites also were found along the freshwater rivers that flowed into the bay, especially around the river mouths at other mainland locations. The late pre-Columbian archaeological culture associated with these sites is the safety harbor culture. So this was known as the safety harbor culture, that area out there. Accounts from the 1539 Hernando de Soto expedition that landed on Tampa Bay and documents from Pedro Martinez de Aviles's voyage to Tampa Bay 27 years later provide information on a number of native groups. Those groups are the Usita, Macaso, Pahoy, and Tocobaga around the bay proper, and Guasoco, Luca, Vesira, and Tocaste. And I'm sure a lot of these different groups probably had different names, original names, but we're just going by what we're reading here. In the 17th century, the name Alafeas appears as another of the Tampa Bay groups. None of these groups appears to have been large. That's what they say. Each consisted only of a single village or a group of villages with outlying homesteads. At times, some groups formed alliances, and at the time of De Soto's expedition, several groups were under the domination of an inland chief named Uri Parakoshi. I know the XI is she. So Uri Parakoshi. Yeah. Possibly a Timacuan who lived well inland in a northeasterly direction. So like I said, a lot of them were part of the Timacuan culture, you know. The Usita occupied the area from the mouth of the Little Manatee River southward to Sarasota Bay. This locality contains a number of safety harbor period mound and village sites. They were mound builders, including Harbor Key, the Bickle Mound, Sneed Island, Pillsbury Temple Mound, Whitaker Mound, and the Thomas Mound and its adjacent village areas. Usita territory may also have included inland sites such as the parish mounds. Okay, lots of mounds around this one particular group. The Macaso lived on the east side of Hillsborough Bay and on the Alafia and Hillsborough rivers. That area included the Mill Point site, the Fort Brooke Mound, and possibly the Bullfrog Creek and Picnic Mound. The Picnic Mound sites. Although geographically close, the Usita and Mokasa apparently spoke different languages. Okay, so they were different folk. After De Soto's army left Tampa Bay, the names of the Usita and Mocaso did not appear again in Spanish documents, so they erased them. They paper genocided them. No other expeditions were sent to either group, and no missions were ever established among them, which probably means that they tried to enforce religion on them, tried to get in good, establish missions and stuff, and yeah, they weren't having it. We might guess that these two groups were who were among the first native Florida Indians to undergo sustained contact with Spaniards, suffered greatly from disease epidemics and from having a significant number of individuals forcibly enslaved and bearers for De Soto's army. So they want to say that they were basically wiped out, and which we know in a lot of cases, especially firsthand because we are still here. The wiping out doesn't necessarily have to be physical. Yeah, it was probably some warfare. Yet the majority of the wiping out has to do with paper genocide. They just stopped writing about them, or they reclassified them. They decided to call them slaves instead. You know, as you know how it goes, because it's done to us today. Remnants of both groups may have gone to live with other Tampa Bay groups, or they may have been known later by other names. See? A third Tampa Bay group, the Pahoe, probably are the same people called the Kapalui in the DeSoto narratives. In 1612, a detachment of Spanish soldiers traveling in small boats from the mouth of the Suwannee River to Tampa Bay, called the Bay of Pahoe, were sent to punish the Pahoe and their neighbors, the Tocobaga. The two groups had been raiding missions to the north, and the Spaniards planned to retaliate. So they were trying to get them off their land. They were trying to take these missions out. They were doing raid missions. They were pulling up. They were pulling up on them. They got together and they started taking care of business. It is probable that the people of Pahoe inhabited some part of Upper Tampa Bay. In 1675, they were said to be living on a river 6 leagues from the Tocobaga, possibly on the Hillsborough River or the Alafia. In 1679, the Pahoe were subject to the Tocobaga Indians, who had extended their hegemony north to Tampa Bay. And if you don't know what hegemony is, we're going to go ahead and look at that definition. So we're going to pause for the cause and get there. Okay, so the definition of hegemony. Hegemony, leadership or dominance, especially by one country or social group over others. All right, so they had a leadership over this other group, over this other tribe. Let's go ahead and get back to the passage. Okay, continuing where we left off. In 1679, the Pahoe were subject to the Tocobaga Indians, who had extended their hegemony north to Tampa Bay. So they were dominating, they were conquering other tribes, and they were putting them under their leadership. Documents from the first several decades of the 18th century, a time when remnants of the Tocobaga and the Pahoe were living in villages adjacent to St. Augustine, equate the Pahoe with the Alafias, although other documents separate the two. So they were just creating their own history and stuff, and just getting stuff all mixed up and confused. Sounds like. It's like they do today. Although the Tocobaga and the Pahoe were allied in 1612, when Spanish soldiers were sent against them, they were not always so friendly. In 1718, a village of Tocobaga, which had moved north to the mouth of the Waukesha River, or Waukesha, however you want to call it, was attacked by Pahoe Indians. 8 Tocobaga were killed and several more were taken captive. Perhaps the Pahoe were settling old scores. The DeSoto expedition, which camped on the south side or the southeast side of Tampa Bay and seemed not to have done any reconnaissance of the opposite side of the bay near Old Tampa Bay, failed to encounter the Tocobaga Indians, whose name is so prominent in documents of the 1560s and later times. A number of archaeological sites near the town of Safety Harbor on Old Tampa Bay contain Spanish artifacts, some of which probably came from the Mendez excursion into the area in 1567, and may be from the town of Tocobaga. Okay, they had towns, and you saw in the last passage they had cities. Okay, so you want to call these places different villages and homesteads and stuff, but they're undermining. These were straight up cities and towns that these Indians were living, that they've built and created. that Tocobaga was located on Old Tampa Bay in the vicinity of the modern town of Safety Harbor is certain. Juan Lopez de Velasco describes the location precisely. He says that the Bay of Tocobaga, known by other names of Bay of the Holy Spirit or of Moriello. See, so they taking over stuff and they renaming shit. So is at 29.5 degrees of latitude. Oh, excuse me. The entrance has its passage to the west. It would have 3 leagues at the mouth and 3 little islets in it, on which there is nothing at all except sand and birds. On the northern side, within it, the coast runs about 2 leagues from west to east, and then an arm of the sea 3 leagues wide turns directly to the north, penetrating into the land for 18 leagues up to the village of Tocobaga itself, a settlement of Indians where it terminates. So we're going to pause for the cause, and we're going to actually create it or generate it, something that's related to this description that he gave. I used AI to see if we can get a visual for this. So let's pause for the cause and see what AI has conjured up for us. Okay, so according to Juan Lopez, this is what he saw and how he describes how that went down, according to artificial intelligence here. But we know that, this was a town, so this little setup over here would have been a little more elaborate than what it's given right here. But this is pretty much what the surrounding area will look like when he was checking it out. All right, so it's the Bay of the Tocobaga. The Bay of the Holy Spirit, Bahia de Espirito Santo, was the name De Soto gave Tampa Bay. I am so glad they changed it to Tampa Bay, because that is too much. The latitude given by Lopez de Velasco is in error, about 2 degrees too far north. This is the same error that would so confuse Panfilo de Narvaez in 1528 when he searched for Tampa Bay, and that appears in an early Spanish navigation rudder from that time. So I don't know if he did it on purpose or not, but that's what he did. So apparently everything you just saw was slightly in error. Even his rendition was slightly errored by, according to them, two latitude degrees or whatever. Okay. On his voyage of the Tocobaga, 2-day sail from Carlos, Menendez was accompanied by the Calusa chief and 20 of the latter's principal men. The chief tried to convince the Spaniards to raid the Tocobaga. So Calusa working with the Spaniards, he's like, hey, we need to roll up on these Tocobagas, man. They tripping. We got beef with them. The chief tried to convince the Spaniards to raid the Tocobaga, or at least to allow his men to go ashore and burn the village. Damn. The Tocobaga and the Calusa had been warring for some time, perhaps since the balance of power in the Tampa Bay region had been altered by the impact of the De Soto expedition. So keep in mind, like I said, the Calusa got in good with the Spaniards, and then the Calusa started dominating that area. They started taking over and making leaderships on there. So one of the tribes or one of the chiefdoms that was resisting the Calusa at that time, it seems, and the Spaniards, was the Tocobaga Indians. So the Tocobaga was like, nah, you teaming up with them, you being Christianized, you done changed your name to fucking Carlos, and you done became a king a chief king and stuff, and now you trying to dominate and take over Tampa Bay and stuff. It's like, we ain't having it out here on this side, though. It's basically what the Tocobaga was saying. And so he's calling in reinforcements, telling them, hey, if y'all could, at least try to burn down the village or something, try to give me some leeway, we can try to take over this. So it's like a movie almost, It's crazy. It's like, yeah. To demonstrate both his powers and his willingness to cooperate with the Spaniards, Chief Tocobaga summoned 29 vassal chiefs, some of whom lived up to 2 days' travel away. The chiefs, along with 100 principal men, assembled at Tocobaga's town, where 1,500 warriors, armed with bows and arrows, paraded before the Spaniards in a show of strength. Menendez wisely persuaded Chief Tocobaga to send the Indian army away. And we're going to pause for the cause, and we're going to get to a visual that I was trying to generate with AI. It did the best it could. So we're going to go forward and see what that image would have looked like, because I thought that was pretty powerful. It was pretty amazing. So let's check that out. Pause for the cause. Okay, so this was the best that I can get it. You know what I mean? It's just, imagine there's 1,500 warriors with different chiefs just staring down these Spaniards, man. And then you got homeboy right here like, hey man, I don't want no trouble. I don't want no trouble. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, AI done messed up their eyes and stuff, and homeboy got 6 fingers. But you guys get the idea. You know what I'm saying? Like, it would have been definitely a sight to see. You know what I'm saying? So, but for sure, man, he didn't want the smoke. He didn't want the smoke. Especially after they said, Calusa and everything was trying to team up against him and do all that, trying to persuade him to. He's like, hey, just go ahead and send him back. We can work together. We could try to work something out. And I was, like they said, smart. He was smart for that. He's being wise at that point. Just try to do something conniving at this point would be deadly. All right, so let's go ahead and move forward. Hey, and if you guys are enjoying this presentation so far and y'all been rocking with me this long, I really appreciate it. Please make sure that y'all like this video. Like this video, because the more you like, the more eyes we get to this channel. All right, and if you're new to the channel, seeing this for the first time, make sure you check out part 1, like I told you. And if you did check out part 1 and you're back over here, I appreciate you. Now you see what's been going down. So hit that notification bell and subscribe to the channel. So whenever we do some things like this, again, you'll be the first ones to be known, to be put on aware when I drop. All right, so let's go ahead and move forward in the presentation. Yep, so as you guys can see, the Spaniards didn't really want that smoke, at least not at that present time. It seems clear that the Tocobaga Indians had considerable power in the region, perhaps controlling a number of other villages in the same fashion that the Jororo, Ace, and Mayaca maintained political control in their respective territories. Again, at least part of this power and the reason for maintaining alliances over other villages was tied to shipwrecked salvage. Even as early as the time of Narvaez's expedition in 1528, the native people around Tampa Bay were salvaging goods from wrecked ships. When Menendez was at Tocobaga, he found a Portuguese man who had been aboard a Spanish shipwreck on the coast 6 years earlier. All of the other passengers had been killed by the Tocobaga. The man had survived by hiding in the woods for a month before being discovered and made a slave. So it was the Indians enslaving the Spaniards. You see that? A lot of stuff was told in reverse. Not saying that there wasn't an intra-American slave trade and later on, but who was enslaving who first? It wasn't just a complete dominance, a complete takeover. All right? We were fighting. A lot of our people were fighting back. A lot of our people were taking their people captive. So don't get it twisted. This wasn't a one-sided event, cataclysm, whatever you want to call it. The Tocobaga were well aware of the native groups that lived to the east. One reason Menendez wanted an alliance with the Tocobaga and to make them Christians was he thought there was a river passage from Tampa Bay to the St. Johns River to Mayaca territory. An idea with native people, with their tradition of canoe travel, assured him was true. But the Tocobaga advised Menendez not to attempt such a passage with the few men he had brought to their village. They said that to go to the Mayaca from Tampa Bay would not be wise because the Indians on the way were numerous and warlike and were enemies of the Tocobaga. All right, so they was trying to tell him, like, hey, you don't want to mess with those ones. You think we bad. You think we got power. Don't mess with them over there. Not with the little bit of Spaniards that y'all got over there. Nah. And we ain't trying to be in, we ain't trying to fight with them over there. We ain't got nothing to do with them. All of the Tampa Bay groups were fishers who also hunted wild animals and gathered wild plants. But of the people living on the bay proper, only the Tocobaga had corn. So these were one of the few tribes out there that actually growing corn on that side. And they may have gotten it from groups to the north. Okay, so they was trading with other groups. You know what I'm saying? So members of the 1528 Panfilo de Narvaez expedition saw corn at Tocobaga, but the fields apparently were 10 or 12 leagues away. That would put them at about modern Dade City, where the DeSoto expedition first observed cornfields. As much as any other region of Florida, man, for real, you gotta peel out. Gotta peel out on me. As much as any other region of Florida, the documentary descriptions of the native people living on Tampa Bay, specifically the Osita, correlate with archaeological evidence. A member of the DeSoto expedition described the town of Osita, believed to have been at the Thomas Mound archaeological site on the Little Manatee River just upriver from Tampa Bay. The town was of 7 or 8 houses built of timber and covered with palm leaves. The chief's house stood near the beach upon a high mount made by hand for defense. At the other end of the town was a temple, on the top of which perched a wooden fowl with gilded eyes. All right, so if y'all want to see an image of that, I can try to create that. I can pause for the cause and get that for you. All right, so this is the best that AI could do with the description that it gave. I'm sorry, it made the freaking bird look goofy on here, but I did the best I could. I told it to make the bird look a little more intimidating, and this is what they gave me right here. So, I mean, hey, I'm trying, man. This AI is limited. It's gonna do AI gonna do what AI do. All right, but I literally just like took the image, took a snapshot of the description, put it into the AI, and then let them know, hey, can you make me a realistic image of this? So this is the best that they could do. So, hey, this is what it is. He put a damn rooster on top of there. But anyway, let's go on and get on to the story. Let's wrap up here. The Tocobaga also maintained a temple in their main village, as probably did each of the towns of the native groups around Tampa Bay. Another structure described in Spanish accounts is a charnel house. When soldiers from the DeSoto expedition scouted the area around Osita, they found a Spaniard, Juan Ortiz, who had been held captive since 1528. Ortiz related how he first was held captive by Chief Wasita, who had ordered the Spaniard burned to death. So he wanted to burn him. But the chief's daughter pleaded for his life, and Ortiz was spared. Instead of being put to death, Ortiz was made to guard a charnel house where bodies and bones of the dead were stored. The incident was related by one of De Soto's men. It says, when Ortiz got well, he was put to watching a temple that the wolves in the nighttime might not carry off the dead there. So he was put there. It's like, look, you guard this place. So if you see any wolves coming, you the distraction. So one night they snatched away from him the body of a little child, son of a principal man, and going after them, he threw a dart at the wolf that was escaping, which, fleeing itself, wounded, let go its hold and went off to die. So, yeah, the wolves were trying to take the bodies away, so they had him fighting against the bodies. I mean, not the bodies, fighting against the wolves. Okay, so another version of the same incident is contained in a second-hand account of the De Soto expedition that utilized information provided years later by survivors, although that account often embellishes and confuses events. The description of Ortiz and the charnel house rings true. It says the cacique, the chief, they called the chief the cacique. The cacique ordered to be inflicted upon the youth, which was Ortiz, another torment. This was that day and night he should guard the remains of dead citizens placed in a designated section of a forest that lay at a distance from the town. So they alienated him. They put him as a guard. Since we can't kill you, you just gonna guard the dead bodies. These bodies had been put above ground in some wooden chests, which served as sepulchres, or coffins, or the chests had not hinges and could be closed only by covering them with boards and then placing rocks or beams of wood on top of the board. After Narvaez and his soldiers landed near the north end of Tampa Bay and marched inland to Tocobaga, they were shown wooden boxes in which corpses, perhaps bones, were stored, carefully wrapped in painted deer hides, so mummified basically. Apparently the boxes had originally been filled with goods being transported to or from New Spain, which was Mexico, and were salvaged from wrecked Spanish ships. Other items, including linen, cloth, feather headdresses, and gold, also had been salvaged from ships. The boxes were put to use holding bodies or bones, most likely in a charnel house. Still, another account, written in the 1560s, describes the process by which bodies were cleaned of flesh and the bones stored in the charnel house or temple. It says, when a cacique, which is a chief, from the leading one dies, they break him into pieces and and macerate them in some large jars, and they macerate them 2 days until the flesh separates from the bones, and they take the bones and they join one bone with another until they mount the man as he was, and they place him in a house that they have as a temple while they fast for 4 days. At the end of the 4 days, they assemble all the people of the village and go out with them to the procession. So they basically have a funeral, and they enter the bones, making many reverences to him, and they say that all those who go to the procession gain indulgences. Okay, so the layout of the village of Osita, as described by the Spaniards, is similar to the plan of Safety Harbor culture
archaeological sites around Tampa Bay. Such village sites typically have a platform mound, probably the base for the chief's house or temple. So these people were very into mounds. They're mound builders. Next to a plaza surrounded by village middens marking where bones had been. One or more burial mounds are present at each site, often located away from the central village. And as you probably remember, and if you haven't seen it, uh, the video that I did of Hurricane Milton, one of those burial mounds was desecrated. It had been dug up, and then they tried to put the body back in there. And so they found bones, they found remains, and they tried to put it back in there. That was shortly before Hurricane Milton was conjured up and came out through that area. So a lot of people are saying, including myself, that that was the work of the ancestors. Okay? So you have to be, got to be careful with them bones now. So go ahead and watch that video, though. Let me pause for the cause and give you a reference to that. So this was that video, Tocobaga Indian Mounds Destroyed, the unbelievable story of Hurricane Milton and the lost Tocobaga tribe. This was October 12th I did this. So make sure y'all check out that video. Okay, so like we said, one or more burial mounds are present at each site, often located away from the village, the central village. Archaeological evidence of charnel houses also have been found at safety harbor sites. North of Tampa Bay, the DeSoto expedition marched through several other villages. The first was at the plain of Guazuco, thought to be on a north-south trail near Dade City in Pasco County. It was at this location, about 50 miles from their campsite on the Little Manatee River and 40 miles from Tocobaga, that the Spaniards saw the first native cornfields in Florida, farther north near modern Locushi. They came to another village called Luca. A third village, Visita, is thought to have been near modern Istachata in northeast Hernando County. North of it, on a large lake, was Tocoste, a village thought to be the Double Island archaeological site at the southern end of Lake Sala Apopka in Citrus County. So if you're in the Florida area and you know these different places, check them out, look them up, and see where they are exactly, because these are where our people were. You're going to see a lot of mound areas, archaeological sites and things, if they're accessible, of course, European artifacts have been found at sites all around Tampa Bay and at sites to the north in Pasco, Hernando, and Citrus counties. They provide a good evidence for the presence of native groups in the 16th and 17th centuries. The impact of these early Spanish entradas on the people around and north of Tampa Bay may have been devastating. The relatively small native population was hard hit by disease and warfare, a double blow. And we already know, when they say disease and warfare, yeah, we fought them. They might have fought us. But a lot of it had to do with the cultural erasure, the paper genocide. And yes, there were some towns that were destroyed. There were towns that were burnt down. There were towns that were flooded. We know these things, so, and disease, however you want to call it. But a lot of it, we know, was intentional. A lot of it was intentional. And mostly had to do with the removing of the people for the land. And those that they couldn't get rid of, they ended up what? Reclassifying us, all right? But we are still here, still alive and well. Following DeSoto's army excursion through the town, or through the region, the Spaniards never again mounted an overland expedition to Tampa Bay or the area immediately to the north. Perhaps they knew what those 16th century armies had done to the native populations. More like they knew what those native populations, those indigenous copper tone mound builders, them strong men, them armies had done to them. All right, that's how I'm going to end it. And we're going to end it on that note. So let's wrap up here. So once again, shout out to our brother, Arniji Mazanavayu, for bringing this idea into life, into conception. Because without your input, I wouldn't even thought of going forward and going a deeper dive into Tocobaga Indians. So this was a very interesting and very enriching and enlightening process for me. So I appreciate you, brother, once again for bringing this to my attention so that I can do this presentation for you guys. So with that being said, Tatakista, to my brother, I cherish you. Tatakista to all of you guys. I really appreciate y'all. I cherish y'all from the bottom of my heart. I'm always open to, what other information you guys may want to bring forward that you want me to do a little deeper dive research into. I can work with the best of my abilities. I'm kind of limited on resources and everything. So for now, and we're trying to get our resources and stuff up here on the True Story channel. So if I'm not one to ask for donations at this time, but it may come a little later. Like I said, I want views. The best you can do right now is like these videos, share these videos, subscribe to the channel, get the viewership and the algorithm up on us, let them know who we are as a community so that we can get those eyes and we can eventually start to monetize and, start some super chats and super thanks and memberships and things of that nature that can help me go deeper and research even more on these particular subjects, gain access to, the stuff that's not free, the stuff that's not accessible, because there's a lot of things that I know that, are out there. It's just, it's the money, I'm a husband and a father of 6 children first. I have to take care of house and home. But once those resources come and we are able to allocate and bring things, start manifesting things, it'll become even more accessible. So for now, I just appreciate the viewership. I appreciate the loyalty. I appreciate the commitment and the time that you guys take out to watch these videos. Is truly appreciated. I cherish it from the bottom of my heart. I cherish each and every one of y'all. So Mazanavayu, I hope I did your people some kind of justice. I did your people some kind of truth. I did this to the best of my ability. And once again, we still here. You still here, brother. So the Tocobaga is still here. We haven't been wiped out. All right, so living that truth, walking that truth every day, brother. All right, y'all, this is Chief Steve signing off. Dr. Kista, once again, I cherish y'all from the bottom of my heart. And Yokoki, thank you. Have a good one. See you next time.